Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully. 26473 25660 3442. For months, the gangling, soft-spoken Meredith Gardner, a scholar of French, German, Lithuanian, Spanish, and Sanskrit, had been staring into the abyss, willing these great blocks of 5-digit numbers to give up their secrets. Then, at the end of 1946, he finally began to understand the heavily encrypted Soviet intelligence telegrams and the startling message they held. Klaus Fuchs, the brilliant theoretical physicist who had first calculated the yield of an atomic explosion, the numbers recorded, was also a spy who had provided the Soviets with the secrets of making a nuclear weapon. Last week, as top American executives met at the White House to discuss the penetration of the country's telecommunication networks by the Chinese, they were served with a grim warning of the strategic damage espionage can inflict. Through a hacking network codenamed Salt Typhoon, China's Ministry of State Security, its apex intelligence service, has gained access to information on targets being surveilled by American intelligence, thus learning which of their spies were exposed and who was secure. Ever since 2003, similar networks have stolen nuclear test data, stealth weapons design, and cryptographic systems from the USA. Even today, the sheer scale of Soviet intelligence operations revealed by Venona, the top secret decryption program led by Gardner, almost defies imagination. Aeronautical scientist William Pearl had handed over jet aircraft design experiments that allowed the MiG-15 to outclass American combat aircraft over Korea. British diplomat Donald Maclean provided strategic assessments. Daniel Zarat gave information on new conventional explosives. Large numbers of the hundreds of agents identified in the Venona documents escaped, among them scientists Alfred Sarat and Joel Barr, who went on to found the Soviet microelectronics industry. Kim Philby, the MI6 double agent exposed by Venona, also ended up in Moscow. A top nuclear spy, codenamed Quantum, which historians John Haynes and Harvey Clare have written, was among many never identified. For India, the lessons of this story aren't of academic interest. Even as tensions on the line of actual control have de-escalated, there is evidence People's Liberation Army hacking networks continue to probe the defenses of critical infrastructure in India, especially the power sector. The ubiquitousness of China-manufactured internet-enabled devices, whether it's closed-circuit television cameras or refrigerators, adds another layer of vulnerability, which has the potential to cripple India's internet and strategic infrastructure at a future time of crisis. Following the meeting at the White House, Microsoft President Brad Smith said he hoped that President-elect Donald Trump's administration would push harder against nation-state cyber attacks, especially from Russia, China, and Iran. We should not tolerate the level of attacks that we are seeing today, Smith said. To walk the talk, though, is a bit more complicated than it might seem. Laundry hung out to dry along the window of their one-room apartment. A photograph records a small group of young people hunched over their computers. Just a typical hostel scene. Except it wasn't. Ty Darling, known to his virtual friends as Wicked Rose, had dropped out of the Sichuan University of Science and Engineering. Together with other bored but technically skilled friends, Darling began cracking computer networks worldwide in search of adventure and money. Even as hackers in the West very similar to this group, located themselves as part of the anti establishment culture. Scholar William Howitt records that the early networks that emerged from 1998 in China saw themselves as agents of national greatness. The first Chinese hacking networks came that year in response to violence against ethnic Chinese in Indonesia. Taiwan soon became another important target for these early Chinese hackers. In 1999 and 2000, when then President of Taiwan Lee Teng-hui declared the country was independent, a string of government websites were defaced. These attacks were relatively crude, but Chinese hacker networks soon developed the capabilities needed to target significant adversaries, stealing Israeli missile defense technology and even hitting security firms like RSA, which provides some of the backbone for global encryption systems. Less than a decade later, evidence began to emerge that these hacking networks had been recruited by the Second Bureau of the People's Liberation Army General Staff's Department's Third Bureau. That's the agency in charge of the country's computer intelligence operations. Also known as Unit 61398, those five digits again. The operation was run out of an inconspicuous 12-story building in Shanghai's Pudong New area. For the most part, using tools freely made available by Western hacking networks on the internet, Unit 61938 is believed to have stolen terabytes of data, often indiscriminately gathered from around the world. An indictment filed by the United States Justice Department in 2019 alleges intelligence officer Deng Xiaoyang, known to his team of hackers and linguists as Manager Chen, successfully stole data from targets as diverse as American defense firms, the government of Saudi Arabia, and even Malaysia's high-speed train system. Three distinct circles of cyber operations are now thought to form the cutting edge of China's cyber espionage campaign, particularly against America. Even as Salt Typhoon targets communications networks, which is often facilitated by the fact that elements of America's tech infrastructure is quite old and with lots of vulnerabilities, a second operation called Volt Typhoon is thought to have been built into hardware and lurk there for future deployment. A third layer, Flax Typhoon, relies on the Internet of Things, that is, objects of everyday use from coffee machines to car electronics, to cripple the normal functioning of the Internet, should there ever be a reason to do so. Little imagination is needed to see how damaging these operations can be. In 2021, an attack thought to have been conducted by Russia's intelligence services planted malware in systems serving over 100 United States government entities and multinational corporations. Those government entities, by the way, including the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, which is charged with, ironically, securing federal computer networks. In testimony given to the American Congress earlier this year, CISA Director Jen Easterly laid out what could happen in a war with China. Telecommunications going down, she said. People start getting sick from polluted water. Trains get derailed. This is a truly everything, everywhere, all at once scenario. Now, the US isn't an innocent in the espionage business. The country has unrivaled capacity still to conduct cyber espionage across the world. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, or IISS, a very reputed organization, has assessed the United States continues to have overwhelming cyber superiority over its adversaries. Ensuring America's security, though, isn't easy. The country's continued reliance on China in its supply chain in particular creates vulnerabilities. Earlier this year, for example, a congressional investigation warned against the use of China-made cranes and container handling equipment at important ports because this could lead to disruptions in a time of crisis. Even though the United States has evicted Chinese-made equipment from much of its critical telecoms infrastructure, the story now playing out shows us that operations like Flax Typhoon still can hurt. The IISS report suggests that India remains a third-tier cyber power, their phrase, not mine, Despite the abundance of skilled personnel and large information technology industry in the country. Although the country has developed some offensive cyber infrastructure, it continues to lack the capabilities to operate at a global level and to really protect itself from attack. Less than 3 years after Gardner first decrypted evidence of the nuclear espionage ring, the Soviet Union tested its first nuclear device at Semiplatinsk, years ahead of estimates made by the Central Intelligence Agency. The material stolen by Fuchs didn't itself create the Soviet bomb, but it did speed up the crash program ordered after Hiroshima by anywhere between 6 months and 2 years. America thus lost its nuclear monopoly at the dawn of the Cold War with enormous consequences, some bad and some good, which I'll maybe go into in a future program. The People's Republic, learning from that lesson, is using its cyber capabilities to address the enormous gap of information and power that continues to separate it from its principal superpower competitor. Even if the cost of securing democracies against espionage proves extremely high, though, the price to be paid for not doing so could be catastrophic. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.